We have an addendum to 14-145 Spring Grove Building Project Lease Agreement, addendum to 14-123 Police Department Reorganization, 14-147 expenditure over $15,000 for Epic Aviation, 14-148 budget amendments, 14-149 5-year capital improvement plan MCRC, 14-150 then and now medical consultants for business fire department, 14-151 then and now Borden Perlman Insurance Railroad, 14-152 then and now Winthrop Construction Engineering, 14-153 income tax allocation adjustment, 14-154 authorized expenditure purchase of Masonic Temple, 14-155 amending salaries and benefits code approved modified job description cable TV, 14-156 purchase of one 2014 police interceptor SUV with equipment, 14-157 purchase one Sneal fire pumper with aerial device, 14-158 rerouting of Buckeye Trail through Medina, 14-159 Lake Medina and Reagan Parkway Trail connector, 14-160 increased PO 2014 000646 Residex LLC, 14-161 expenditure over $15,000 Winter Equipment Street, 14-162 submittal of bid on CPF contract, 14-162 discussion place name City of Medina on City Water Towers, 14-164 30th Anniversary Candlelight Walk Celebration, 14-165 agreement with T&M Associates Champion Creek Restoration, 14-166 revocable use permit 122 Public Square, 14-167 rezoning several properties of R3 to C2 on West Smith Road, 14-168 expenditure over $15,000 Mid-Ohio Concrete, 14-169 Spring Grove Bridge Replacement Design Build Process, 14-170 Grant Application Ohio Public Works Commission, 14-171 agreement with HNTB Ohio West Smith Road Reconstruction, 14-172 easements, 4 of them for Waters Road Water Main, 14-173 easements, 5 of them Lancaster Drive Drainage Improvements, 14-174 easement, 1 of them Forest Meadows Drainage Improvements, 14-178 amending ordinance 127-14 Public Square Restrooms and Visitor Center. That was for the Finance Committee. Special legislation, we have 14-175 amending section 1147-12 the sign code. Streets and Sidewalks Committee has 2, 14-176 blue traffic light at East Sturbridge and Waters Road, and 14-177 reconstruct brick section on South Broadway. Okay. Next item we have is addendum to 14-145 Spring Grove Building Project Lease Agreement. And I think this is Jason Worley, Pat Patton, and maybe Greg Hubert. All 3 of you, right?
Yes.
Whoever wants to take the lead.
I'll take it. Thank you, Mr. President. At the Public Properties meeting last month on the 21st, we presented the Spring Grove building project, and we're requesting approval and authorization for the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with the Friends of the Cemetery for the use of the Amos Mears building, as well as advertise, bid, and award the contract for site work improvements. And thirdly, to appropriate funds necessary for both the site work as well as the construction of the maintenance building. The request to bid and award the maintenance building portion of the project will be at a later date. But it was discussed at Public Properties that the building option utilizing $45,000 in cost savings was kind of the direction we were leaning towards. I was contacted by members of Friends of the Cemetery after the Public Properties meeting, specifically Jerry Gunner and Teresa Merkel. I sat down with both of them and kind of talked a little bit about what went on in the meeting. They were excited with the direction that things were going, but a little bit upset with some of the cost-saving measures we were contemplating, as far as possibly getting rid of some of the brick on the maintenance building, eliminating some asphalt, and that was a pretty big concern to the Friends of the Cemetery. After that meeting with them, the Friends of the Cemetery had a meeting, and they basically submitted a resolution that offered an additional $50,000 towards the project, contingent upon the city reinstating our original plan, not taking any cost-saving measures on the exterior of the building or the site work. So the buildings basically were designed in a manner to respect the surroundings, not take away from the historic atmosphere of the cemetery. And implementation of the plan will reflect the pride that both the city of Medina and the Friends value at the historic cemetery. The budgetary plan that we submitted with the memo reflects the additional contribution from the Friends of the Cemetery and the cost breakdown. The total city share of the project as modified is $467,850, which is an increase of approximately $118,000 from the amount that the Finance Committee originally approved in 2013. So the total for the project, city portion, is $599,050. Of this, about $138,000 will be reimbursed from the Friends of the Cemetery. It'll be an internal advance. One thing I do want to note is these are budgetary numbers. There is potential that our bids could come in under those numbers, and there could be a potential cost savings at that point. So basically with the project, the Parks, Cemetery, and Forestry Department, I'm proposing that they throw in $135,000 in carry forward, with the remainder coming from the general fund.
Mr. Huber?
I drafted a lease agreement that was modified to reflect what everybody is satisfied to do in terms of the lease agreement. And then I stopped with this lease agreement because we're, with this whole project, roughly $118,000 to $120,000 short of what it's going to take to put it all together once Patrick worked through what's required for the site plan and all the details. We need to agree on the numbers if you're going to so incline. If we do reach agreement on the numbers, then I need to draft an agreement between the City of Medina and the Friends of the Cemetery with respect to who's paying what, and that's a little different from the lease agreement. So what we will have is an agreement on the money issues and who's doing what, and then we will have a lease agreement if we put this whole project together.
Just a question with the agreement with the Friends of the Cemetery and the money. Am I correct, if I remember correctly, there was a request given to the Friends of the Cemetery from the Mears family, is that correct? And there's enough money to cover their share here, is that, okay. So that agreement, I just want to make sure if there is agreement, it can be, there's money available to cover it. Questions, anybody? Jim?
I think at Public Properties, we did pass it out of there at 3-0, and we felt like that there wasn't another option for the money, but now they've come up with the money for the option, so we appreciate that from the Friends of the Cemetery, and, you know, I would be in favor then of moving forward with this as is.
I would too. So we're still on the hook for additional $118,000 from what we originally planned for our portion. And that's something I was struggling with.
Because we have other ones coming today that we're under too, we have to come up with more money on other projects.
And to that point, Jansen optimistically said that the bids could come in lower, but lately we've seen them coming in higher. That's the realistic view of it. So, you know, I think we need to be, maybe have this revisited to make sure that these numbers that we have are correct.
Patrick and I talked to both Simmons Brothers and 620 Construction to get budgetary numbers for the building itself. Pat, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, this is a month or two ago, and both of them indicated that general budget was sufficient. Of course, the building's not, our building isn't designed yet, so we won't know for sure until we get it designed and out to bid, but they both indicated as a budget number, they thought it was pretty good shape.
What's the contingency plan if Paul is correct that it comes in, let's say, 30,000 over, what happens?
Well, we have the part of the agreement with the Friends of the Cemetery throwing in extra money. I talked with Jerry about it. As long as we don't take any cuts on the exterior of the building, we can make, there's things that we can cut out inside the building, like reusing light fixtures from the parking garage, eliminating painting, combining some of the garage doors. Instead of 3, we have 2, one large one and one small one. So there's a lot of things that we can do with the interior of the building itself that'll save a couple thousand.
Couple thousand. Maybe we should do that ahead of time.
I don't know if they're gonna bid it out, like you can ask. Bill's question was if you could, those cost-saving measures now that are okay, why wouldn't we take advantage of those? Like what you just mentioned, using the lighting from the garage, I think we had 40-some fixtures, or changing the garage doors, or, I mean, you're looking at those when you bid that out?
Yeah, we're definitely gonna look at it, but right now, we're just going off budgetary estimates from the architect that did the rough design of the facility. So it's really kind of hard at this point to be nitpicky as to what we want.
So I think the question is, if you all recall, we had the capital improvement 5-year plan of what we want to do. This was one of the items. We have a couple more that we're discussing currently now with the court and the restrooms on there and the pool. So we know we want it. That's not the issue. The issue is what do we want and how much do we want to spend. Originally, recall, we had $350,000 allocated towards the construction. It was a 50-50 split. It was estimated to be about $700,000. And then the site work came in that wasn't really planned for, that kind of upped the ante a little bit, and which changed the allocation and the price associated with the construction of the cemetery. So, I mean, is everybody comfortable with that, or any comments on that, or is it good?
I'm just, I mean, so out the door, this project's gonna cost $860,800, is that correct?
Estimated now, yes.
And see, and that, I'm just shocked that, I understand we want it to look classy out there, but to have this building and a facility for the cemetery workers out there, which I think they've needed for a long time, to get our equipment under roof, give them a little more room to work with, but, I mean, we're just shy of $1 million on a project like this, and like I said before, I'm struggling with it, so.
So what they're really asking for, the carry forward being used by Park, Cemetery, and Forest, we appropriated, I think, $275,000, so they're really asking for the difference between $326,100 and $275. So 51.1
Correct.
is the additional funds that we didn't plan on spending.
I understand that, it's still
So,
bottom line.
Jerry, what you're talking about the site then is you want to maintain, what is it, like the natural flow of the site, because that is more appealing to the cemetery. Is that what I'm hearing?
You want me to stand up?
You can sit, it's fine.
The whole idea of this thing is that we're trying to tie everything together in the cemetery. So the contour of the land dictates how that new building would be constructed. And the reason for the stone and the brick along the top, to make it a little nicer, is it's a historic site in this city, right in the center of the city. It's no different than the Uptown Square, and people see it every day. And so that's why we felt that if we would come forward with more money, we don't want those cuts, because the blacktop would have stopped right at the edge of your building, and then you would have had stone, and it would have turned into a mud quagmire like it always does. It would just deteriorate the whole project. Also, in the cuts that you had suggested, they were going to use blacktop underneath those bends. That never worked with a front loader going in to take dirt from blacktop. You still have to have 8 inches of concrete. So we as a group felt that this project should go forward just as it's been designed from day one. That our building looks beautiful, the new parking lot will be beautiful, the employee parking lot will be beautiful. Your building will blend in with the cemetery more, with that brick veneer on the bottom. And it's not brick, the bottom, it's a sandstone face, artificial. It looks like Washington Park, which is right next to the cemetery. And then the row of brick on top ties it into the Amos Mears Memorial Building, because it'll be red brick like this, basically, rolled red brick, so it looks a little older. So everything ties. The sandstone look will tie a little bit in with the chapel. The gables of the office will tie in with what looks like the chapel. So everything will tie, and the whole end of that cemetery will become a showplace, like a garden. And that's why it needs all to be done at one time and done right, and not cut and piecemealed in.
Just to add one little extra piece to the project, We're planning to open section 19 and 20, which is directly adjacent to where the maintenance garage is going to go. A portion of the roadway that's going in is it's basically, we're gonna continue that road down, so it's gonna we're already gonna have a quarter of the road completed with this project, in order to open those 2 new saleable sections, because we're running out of saleable lots, up close to our garage area. So this is kind of as a side note.
You know, I mean, I hear what, you know, I hear what you guys are saying. The
Yeah,
cemetery.
one more thing is, the fact is that the cemetery is on the National Registry for Historic Places. And that was obtained years ago by the Friends of the Cemetery for the city. So that's why we wanted to look right.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, the cemetery, you know, belongs to people here. You know, we're just trying to come up with the financing to make this look right. But, you know, Jerry's right. You don't want to do it. It's a permanent thing. You know, it's the biggest municipal cemetery in the county. It's by far the most beautiful cemetery in the county. And it is in large part because of the Friends of the Cemetery and the work they've done over the years, whether it's the mausoleum or all the other attributes that they put in that cemetery. And they've committed a lot of money, a lot of time. The Amos Mears thing will be fantastic, and it's a nice recognition of somebody who contributed significantly to the welfare of this community. And as we're looking at, like Mark said, we've got the pool, we've got the bathroom, we've got these other expensive things, but I guess the ones we decide to do, we would better serve the community if we do them like they said, if we do them right. And then look at the number of things that we're doing to be sure that if we're gonna do one, let's do it right, and then we need to look at some of the other ones. And, you know, if finances dictate that, maybe we need to look at some of the other ones and either cut back or hold on. But I think this has been kind of drug out for quite a while, and I don't blame anybody on the commission a bit for wanting to get going with this, and I agree with you 100%. If you're gonna do it, let's do it right, so that it's something people can be proud of, and it's long overdue.
Another time that I'm agreeing with you 100%. I mean, it must be the year.
That's twice.
How high can I count?
Right. But I do agree with Jerry and Mr. Lamb. We all struggle. I mean, there's not a person on this dais or the administration that with each project. You know, we were fortunate during the economic downfall that a lot of our projects come in significantly under budget. And that's starting to creep back up. But I think with the reassurances from the 2 contractors that we know are going to bid on it, that they think, you know, they're pretty sure anyhow that they're going to be able to stay within budget. That I think is encouraging. The number 2, I agree with Jerry and Bill. We shouldn't piecemeal this. Whether it be the cemetery or the courthouse or the restroom facility, if we do agree to do it, which I am 100% in favor of the cemetery project, not only because of the things that Jerry and Bill mentioned as far as the beauty of the cemetery, and it is our residents' cemetery. It's just not our cemetery, it's the community cemetery. In the dignity that is deserving of the people that's interned there, to have not only a maintenance facility, but when somebody comes in to purchase a cemetery lot, whether it be an in-ground or above-ground, they deserve to have a facility that when they walk out of there while they're grieving, that you always hear of perpetual care. Every cemetery offers perpetual care. But when you go into a facility to make arrangements for purchasing a lot or in-ground or above ground, and you smell diesel fuel and gasoline and oil, and the folks at the cemetery do the very best they can, and the city has helped along the way to try to make it as accommodating as possible. We've all agreed this is long overdue. So I'll end with, I support it 100%, and I think we should find, in my opinion, we should find
the resources to go ahead and move forward.
Keith, let me ask you one quick question. On the cemetery carryover funds, is there only 50,000 available, or is there more available? Do you know?
I don't know.
Do you know, Jason? You know, Jansen?
There might be a little bit more, but it's gonna delay some of the projects that we have planned.
Well, this is the biggest project in the cemetery. I think this is the one you want to have go. I mean, if there's like 75,000, I mean, you could look at taking a little bit more of the cemetery
Right.
carry forward, because we budgeted over the years to do that. This is an important project.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one way to offset some of the cost if people are concerned of taking it out of the 301.
What projects would be delayed?
We have a water line installation project and the grading and paving of sections 19 and 20.
Which is where the next available lots are to sell. So
Correct.
We could end up with a building, but no lots to sell. So I just want you to understand what we're trading off.
Might not want to trade them off.
Because the
Like
lots
closing down the
are
sales
a
funnel.
revenue source.
Right.
And about the time people keep coming and we turn them away, that's not going to accomplish what we need either. So.
Anything else?
Just briefly, I do agree that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it all at once. We're not going to do it piecemeal, because that's the only way it's going to look right. So, and you get your cost efficiencies by getting all your construction in at once. If we do it piecemeal, it'll end up, end of the road, it'll cost us more than this.
I'll be honest, I lived here almost all my life. You guys have done a lot of beautiful things to our cemetery. I remember riding through there as a kid. I still drive through there every once in a while to look at the old monuments and try to take back some of Medina history, but, we're up here trying to spread as money as far as we can, and, this final dollar amount, I know they're contributing towards their building, but, it just seems like these projects get more expensive, and yes, they're close to our heart, and we want it to look right, but to me, it comes down, what can we afford, and from now and going into the future, I mean, are we gonna put ourselves in the jam for any basic work, like Jansen brought up, that keeps the park up, or keeps the cemetery up? Sometimes I look at it as a park, it's that beautiful, but, I honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to support it. Thank you.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item we have is addendum 114-123, Police Department reorganization. Chief?
The Budget Committee voted on the creating the part-time police administrative assistant at the 8A, and also on 2 more additional police officers. You asked me to go back and look at removing all the part-time positions. So this reorganization is that. We came back with that. I would just tell you, though, that those provided us flexibility. If in the future we need that, I will come back and, make the case for it. But I'm prepared to recommend those positions go away at this point.
Discussion?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we reviewed this at the Safety Committee, and we passed it 3-0. I think it's a good move. The numbers came in, they haven't changed since you and I last spoke, in that we're going to end up with a positive cash balance all the way through 2019 with this reorganization.
And there's additional things beyond our meeting in this one. He added, I believe you added 2 stationary road limit inspectors part-time, removing them, we didn't discuss
We
that.
took those out. We took out the 2 part-time dispatchers.
Yeah, those are
We
additional.
took out
money.
4 part-time police officers.
Okay.
At this point, the only part-time we'll have will be the records room clerks and my secretary.
Part-time officer, 1 part-time officer.
Oh, I'm sorry, 1 part-time officer that's in the records room, in the
But
property room.
just for clarification, though, the reason that the budget seemed swelled was because if those were listed, we were funding them whether they were filled or unfilled. So by removing them, then that eliminates all of those numbers. and keeps the budget down to where it should be. More realistic, I think.
Any other questions?
Move to approve the reorganization with the emergency clause?
Second and third, emergency clause.
All in favor with the emergency clause?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I'm going to move up one, since we need to discuss it, moving up 14-178, amending ordinance 127-14, public restrooms and visitor center. That's Mayor?
Sure. We awarded, or we let the bid, and the bid came back at, the lowest was $350. And that was presented to Board of Control to pass on to Finance, but we only approved $250,000. So the question is whether we want to put $100,000 in to make it happen, and if so, where we want to take that from. Mr. Corn and I talked a little bit about the electric aggregation fund, or the other choices to lessen the project. So with that in mind, Friday, I happened to be walking over for a meeting with the state legislators at Lager and Vine in the afternoon, and saw that they ordered 6 porta-johns for the International Festival, which is the largest one-day event that we have. The Candlelight Walk is larger, but it's over 3 days. So I then came up in the afternoon on Saturday to kind of monitor the use of those, and did not see people standing in line or waiting or whatever. At the same time, well, actually on Friday, not Saturday, I asked Patrick and Nino to get the dimensions of the existing building and look at what kind of restroom structure we could build within the existing structure without doing more brick and building out over the drive-through. And Patrick did some preliminary drawings. We sent it up to the engineer. The engineer did some more work on it all day today. And it looks like we could accomplish, not for certain yet, and this would require us to rebid the whole thing. But I have the numbers with us here, a copy for each of you. But in essence, we could do 5 ladies' restrooms, 4 urinals, and a toilet in the men's, and then handicap or family restroom to be shared. So Patrick's estimate is that could be done clearly within the 250, possibly done closer to 200,000. We don't have an engineer's estimate for that. Compared to where we are today with the firehouse restrooms, which we could still use for porta-johns, putting 4 or 5 ladies and 4 or 5 men's and a family restroom would still be over and above what we're doing with the porta-johns for the events, and be substantially less labor-intensive than building a brick wall and closing that entire drive-through. That's where the labor is, you know, those brick by brick, building that, running all of the plumbing out through there, as opposed to within the existing building. So, I'm not here to tell you one way or the other, but to simply lay another alternative there for discussion purposes.
You know, when I was coming up here, I was talking to somebody on the square, and we were talking about the size of the restroom and the cost, you know, the room. And it's interesting because that was what we talked about, was the numbers. And I don't know what you do with the overhang, but I was thinking on Labor Day, my wife does an art show in Upper Arlington, which is a pretty wealthy place outside of Columbus, and it's in a big sports complex field, and there's about 10 or 15 or 20,000 people. It's a huge event. And I was thinking about the bathrooms. I was trying to think about the numbers in that overhang, and in that facility, there is a men's bathroom and a women's bathroom, but there is only like 1 toilet, 1 urinal, and 1 sink in the men's, and I'm presuming the women's is probably similar. So, you know, I think you might have hit the nail on the head, I think, with I don't know what we do with the overhang, but the idea of keeping it all in that building that exists would have to eliminate a substantial amount of the cost of,
Right.
and reducing the number of units.
Well, if we created handicap parking under the overhang, we talked about needing more handicap parking, the fact that it's covered, especially if it's a snowy day, whatever, would obviously be beneficial to those with special needs. But again, this is just an alternative. John and I have struggled with this. We've talked about it several times since. It's difficult for each and every one of us to try to predict out 20, 30 years. And we don't want to build something that's going to be good for 4 or 5 years, but yet to project how much is really needed, how much is too much, and how much is the right amount. That's the difficult balance. But just like we talked about with the cemetery, each one of these things costs us dollars. And the engineer's estimate, by the way, it's not that the bids were way over the engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate on this project was $343,000. The lowest was $350, and I think the highest was $380. So it was right in the ballpark.
And I think the mayor hits it on the head. I think that we have to look at that, and looking at the cemetery project as that's a pivotal for the city, I think this is too. And I don't think that changing it from what we want is a good idea. I think that people have an expectation of what Medina's about and how it's going to look, and there's an incorporation of a fountain at this location. And I think this will get more use than the cemetery building, and we're spending a lot of money to make the cemetery building look good. I think we should do justice and do the same thing here on the square. I think that there's going to be the naysayers that say, well, this is way too much money, but when it's done and built, I think you're going to find that everybody who goes in there and keeping the visitor center in the front instead of eliminating the visitor center totally and just have a little brochure thing is going to be important for the ongoing of the community. If we continue wanting to grow the development of the square, looking at projects on the west side of the square that would possibly bring more people, having more housing downtown, I think we're going to see that this could be a great addition. And I think that what made it a great addition was the visitor center, because people can go in, they can look around, there can be information they can pick up, there's other things that could happen in that area that the restrooms would go in. And I think that that'll be part of the feel of the downtown, because we've worked so hard to create a great downtown, and we've done so well at bringing people to Medina. I think this will just be one more thing to say, you know what, they have a great facility there, we'll have our event in Medina. And I think that's what would happen. Now, the costs associated with it, of course, because we have to make it look nice. We're talking all the red brick, just like the cemetery would want to use. I mean, we're bringing that downtown. So, and if you weigh the things, in my mind, what is necessary, what is not necessary, I mean, I don't know, between the two projects. And this is one of our projects on the 5-year capital plan, as we identified as a need for the downtown. Now, the question is the size of it. Can it be smaller? Yes. Should it be smaller? I mean, I don't know. Looking in the future, 10 years from now, I don't ever want to come back and say, we shouldn't have done it. We should have went and spent the money. Because once we do it, you can't go back. And it's still going to cost a couple $100,000 to do this. So, what do we achieve? What's our goals? That's the question. My goal would be, I think, go with the original plan, do it right, like you mentioned with the cemetery. Do it right the first time, get it done, and move forward.
Two concerns. One, when I was up this weekend for the International Fest, we parked on West Washington Street. When we walked up, there were several people standing outside the fire station in line. So I don't know how many people were in line inside. I don't think 20 restrooms are out of the question. Maybe it is for today, but if the events keep getting larger and better. My other concern, though, would be if we didn't enclose the drive-through area and started utilizing that for parking, all right, I think we're asking for problems there. I like the idea we had with incorporating the fountain, enclosing it, and
Well, I think you also mentioned we could make this a park then. I think we can designate it as a park and try to get funds, because that fountain issue was an issue with us, the cost of how to do that.
Right.
And where we get grant money to do that. I think one way to do it was we could designate this as some kind of downtown historic park, and then generate funds to finish the fountains or whatever we ended up doing that. But that's the option. But
sorry.
But you are probably correct. I mean, there's an issue, if that's open up for parking, then you got people-car conflicts, and then how do you handle those conflicts? Anybody else?
What do you say?
Go ahead.
I like the idea of no parking myself as well. I know the mayor's trying to utilize the area in there. And this is another project that keeps increasing. I know we talked about this for years now, and I know buying a corner property on the square is expensive. I understand that, and I want it to be presentable as well, but, you know, again, we keep extra $100,000. That's a lot. Now, with his sketch here, is this something that will work? And then with the very large things we have up on the square, we still bring in, I mean, we still have the firehouse, like it was mentioned. Do we just bring in some porta potties for the real large events, and the downsized sketch we have here will work throughout the rest of the year? I mean, I would lean more towards that myself.
I kind of have to agree with Mark in that, you know, planning for one day, it's like the parking lots that we have at Kmart for the day after Thanksgiving sale. The rest of the time, the parking lot's empty. All right, that would be the case here. While I agree it should all be done at once, whatever we decide, we're going to do it once. We're not going to do it piecemeal. To plan for that overpopulation, if you will, for one day, and then have it just sitting there doing nothing the rest of the year, we're still going to have to maintain it. We're still going to have to, you know, make sure that it's secure and the like. You know, maybe a smaller facility is the right way to go. In this case here, and then if Matt comes along and says, hey, we're going to have 100,000 people, then we may have to plan for that bubble. But we still have the place across the fire station, across the street, the fire station as well.
Is there anything we can do to the fire station to enhance that or bring that up if we did this smaller version here where we could add in any way or reconfigure those at the fire station?
I don't know so much about adding, but the remodel, definitely could always remodel. That, it does need upgrading.
It does. It's not in great shape.
It's degrading as time goes on, but.
With the limited space, I don't know
Yeah,
if you
no.
can fit any more facilities there.
But we can make them look better.
Yes, yes.
And there's nothing we could do out the back. I know we've talked a couple times with that little bit of space back there.
Yeah, there's property ends right there.
Okay.
We could still go to Marie's.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Well, with Greg saying that, I'm not sure that this is enough. I know those porta potties didn't get used a whole lot, but they were still going in the stores using the store owners' restrooms. But I don't know that we need the 20-some restrooms that we originally planned either, but I don't know how do you
I don't think you can, I guess the question is, as we talked about before, if you're going to enclose that, you're going to maximize it, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Is there a possibility of too many restrooms? Possibly. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Is there a possibility of too few? More likely. Is that a bad thing? Probably.
one of the reasons we started talking about this is because we have these large events, we bring in porta potties, and it just looks tacky, it doesn't, it's not the image we want. And I think if we go smaller and have to bring them in for some of the events anyways, why are we doing this in the first place?
Right. I think I guess the question is going to be, I don't know what, as we go back to this, 20 years from now, what are we going to be? I mean, are we going to have bigger events? Are we going to have more events? I guess that's the question. We have one event, the International Fest, that brings 15,000 in one day. Are we going to have?
That Candlelight Walk too.
Well, that's over a few days. But are we going to have more of those events where we have a one-day event with 10, 15,000 people? Are we going to get, I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. Can we sustain that? I don't know. I guess Main Street Medina is going to be involved in that discussion, but you're right. What do you do? And I don't know why people weren't using porta potties. I kind of know why women may not want to use them. Men are a little bit less discerning about where they go, but, you know, I would imagine you're correct. They were probably going into merchants and using the enclosed toilets.
I have a question. If we still enclosed the drive-through and maybe only put, 8 on each side instead of, 12, and not actually, put as many toilets in, but the space would be there for in the future, 10 years from now, we could add toilets because we'd have the space. Maybe the city could use part of this place for storage or something, I don't know. But,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
but I hate the idea of, personally, of getting away from the enclosure, enclosing that area and making it, you know, as presentable as possible for the historic district.
Well, if I may, the way I understand it, the fixtures, you have to run the plumbing through the wall that's gonna separate the two sides. So whether you put 6 or 8 or 10, all of the infrastructure is there, and the cost of the individual fixtures is not
Minimal.
really,
Okay.
yeah. So the cost, the biggest cost is the concrete floor over the parking area, and then the enclosure itself, because it's so labor intensive with the brickwork.
With the, yeah, the red
Yeah,
brick.
right.
The footers and bricks.
So once you get inside the building, there's not much left.
But I think, I mean, I don't think we want cinder block walls. I
Right,
mean,
correct.
We're gonna want the brick walls. I mean, you know, no offense to the cemetery, but that would be where, it would be different for a garage. And then we're gonna have a garage looking like the restrooms. I mean, they're gonna have red bricks on the garage, which is,
And you compel businesses to do the same, so how do you not?
yeah, we
do
make
that
everybody else do it.
district?
So, right.
Yeah, I don't think that we want to, I don't think we want to do something that's unattractive. I think there's a couple things to look at. One is we, you know, we talk a lot about people using the bathrooms of businesses, but to a point, a lot of the activity that goes on the square is there to benefit the businesses. So to some small degree, using bathrooms of businesses makes some sense if you're in that business. On the other hand, when we look at the difference between the price we thought we'd get and the price that it came in at, if you look at the private investment in the town, it's been the private investment that really has grown and maintained the economy of the town, which is huge. So our additional $100,000 is really insignificant in compared to what private business is putting in, you know, on a regular basis. So on that, you know, to that point, you may well be right,
Well,
that we want to do this so that we're building for something for the future. The only quandary I have is that many days of the, you know, most days of the year, there's just nobody going to be using the bathroom. You know, you might have 5 people using the bathroom.
You're thinking of today, though.
Well,
Our job is to
I
think in the future.
I can't picture a day in 20 years from now when there's gonna be 20 people in that bathroom at one time on a regular basis. You may be right. I don't disagree with you that we ought to go ahead with the original plan. And I think, as I said, compared to what private business does that has really made the economy of the city, the extra $100,000 is a lot of money, and it sounds like the bathrooms are expensive. And, you know, that's not, I don't have a concern about.
Well, the question.
I don't have a concern about people thinking, well, you spent way too much money on the bathrooms, because as I said before, once this is done and we're down the road, people are gonna look at this and go, it's a beautiful place and we're glad it was done. But if there's a way we can reduce some of this cost,
We're
I'll
there,
do that too.
I think we went through that with the mayor and the architect and Nino, we all, I mean, it started out, I think it was like 480.
It was closer to
And we really, you were at the meeting, and we really scaled it way back. But the question is, if you're kind of comfortable with that, where does the money come from? And we were all kind of talking with the mayor, I mean, it's like, well, do we use taxpayers' dollars? You know, maybe not. Where else, the only thing left is electric irrigation with $154,000 in it. Do we want to use it all out of there? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, this is a fund where we don't have any carry forward. There's no like carry forward that we can say we saved up to do this, like the parks and the cemetery and the forestry. We don't have that. If we had that, it would probably be an easier decision, but this is not a type of fund, and that's why I want to take it from Nino, that we can use the carry forward funds to do that. So.
You don't have appropriated carry forward, but I mean, when you look at your 301 fund, you put an allocation of income tax at 7.5% every year into the 301 fund for projects like this. It's not appropriated, but it's cash available to spend on capital projects, whether it's the cemetery that we just talked about, this, buying a building next door.
There's a lot of competing interests for that fund, and we have a lot of projects that we've discussed to use that fund. If we want to do all the projects we'd have, there'd be zero in that account. I mean, because we got enough projects to cover that whole account.
Sure, there's always people that want to spend the money, I know that.
So, I mean, I think we narrowed it down to the top 5, and this is one of the top 5. So, I mean, we've been looking at this and studying it for years, and we came up with the plan, but, I mean, if does enough people feel comfortable spending the extra 100, let's get that out of the way first, then we don't have to go any further. I mean, who's okay with spending the extra 100? You okay? You okay?
I think so.
You okay? No? Yes?
I know, I like the idea that it needs to be closed in. I feel like we need to do it right. The only way to do that is to spend $100,000.
And I want it done right, and I understand and I agree with the thought of having it closed in, because we don't want to create any hazards like that.
And I guess the question is, I feel more comfortable using some of the electric irrigation money, that's my personal opinion, instead of tax dollars to help offset the costs that we were anticipated. Because that money, though it's not quote-unquote free money, it came from, what's First Energy or Ohio Edison as far as joint electric irrigation, and it's not tax dollars, as we assume tax dollars would be. It's not coming from income tax, nor property tax or anything like that, so, I mean, that's the only way I feel more comfortable in that regard.
And by creating essentially another park, I agree with you that it may be to our advantage down the road for, for any improvements and stuff we receiving grants and stuff. I think it's going to enhance the city, and if all 22 restrooms are not used more than 5 or 6 times a year, so be it.
In the long term, I think it'll definitely, especially with the projects we're anticipating to occur around the square in the 9-block area for improvement-wise, I think there's going to be more intense people or a number of people downtown than there currently is, or has ever been, just by what we think we can do, and hopefully we can accomplish that. I mean, do you see that? I mean, the projects that we're looking at in the future that...
Yeah, the only thing I caution on is the grants. The grants, until we name it a park, apply for the grant, then I don't think it can be used. So if we build this and we put the amenities in there, I don't think we can apply for the grant funds post and then reimburse.
Oh, no, I wasn't talking about.
Okay, so, but I think we could
Future.
then do some plantings, do
Outside.
some benches, do some
Fountain.
amenities, a variety of things, once we get it done. And if anything, it shows a match already on the city's part of the land acquisition and what we're putting in. The only other thing I would mention is that the alternative that I gave you, and I'm not aligned with either one, but my intention was not to bring back the portage ons. I think either we say this is enough and it is, or we do the build out, because the whole idea of having the permanent restrooms was to get rid of the portage ons and not detract from the downtown, in my perspective.
Well, Mark, I mean, I know you're...
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay, what about the trailers that are rented that you can bring in that essentially look like a double wide, but they're all porta potties? Does anybody have a dollar amount of
We
what
did,
those
we
are?
talked about that, the council had asked us to investigate that, and I remember for each day, it was like 5,000, 7,500
Per
per
day?
unit.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, it was like, it's unbelievable, but they were sanitized, you walk into them, it's like walking to a
Oh,
hotel.
that's
They were
right.
ungodly
Water,
expensive from what I
running water,
remember.
everything else. Right.
That's been a year or two since the discussion started, but it wasn't worth it, at least at that point.
And the fountain, that's gonna be a donation, correct? Or-
Well, we're still working the
Still
numbers
working
on it. There's donation amounts, but as we're doing all of just like the cemetery, when you start looking at the site work, the utility runs, all of the things, we're sorting through those numbers still. And then our plan is to have a meeting with the family, say, look, this is really what it's going to cost, and these are some of the challenges that we have.
I mean, I want additional space up there for people to use restrooms, so they don't, I mean, I agree with Bill somewhat on when he says they come in and patronize the businesses, but also use the restroom, but not everybody does. But to me, I think we just need to shrink it down a little bit. I mean, to me, like I said, even with the cemetery, there's a need there, but I think we need to take a step back and see what else we can do for a little bit less cost.
Understood. I mean, you're in the minority in that regard, but understood. I mean, I guess what does everybody think about electric irrigation money? Yes?
A little bit more palatable.
Yes.
All 100 of it?
Why not?
I know Mark has some projects coming up, but I don't know if that'll affect it.
They're not gonna go anywhere tonight anyhow.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I brought that up in our last discussion on this. I think you should use the electric aggregation. I mean, that was put towards an economic spin on that, and that's what we said we were gonna use some of it towards, and, you know,
Didn't we already commit some of the aggregation money for this already?
No.
Not at all?
We can always take Kimberly's money for economic development back there. She has a lot of money back there.
How much is in it?
Is it economic development?
I'd say a little bit of it.
$154,000.
Right?
Right.
I'd say a little bit of that.
What's coming up today too? So, all right, is everybody, you covered with that? Do we have a motion, I guess, if we're gonna go that direction?
To use the 100,000 overage from electric aggregation
Correct.
with the emergency clause. I'll make a motion, then 100,000 comes from electric aggregation funds for the overage with the emergency clause.
I'll second that motion, which includes the emergency clause.
Is there any further discussion?
The only other discussion, I would like to at least look at doing something with upgrading those bathrooms. in
For the fire.
station, too.
As far as
Money.
cosmetically, we're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, now, was there an issue with them? Did they get clogged up? I know there's,
It has.
They're almost like residential
They are.
bathrooms. I mean, the towel, you know, there's no, the paper towel fixtures, the toilets, they're really kind of like residential. The floors, I think the floors are not nice. You know,
VCT tiles starting to peel up from.
Yeah, I mean,
wet.
maybe this is a good time for us to, you know, when we do the next meeting would be to
well, if you, right, I guess the other
Look
question is,
at
once the
other
new
funds.
restrooms are done, people are aware of them, because right now they're only aware of
Right.
the fire
It's
station.
all the same.
And
But, but they will be the same thing. If you're on this side of the square, you're still gonna go.
Right.
People won't walk across to use.
And those upgrades can't be that, I mean, that flooring and new fixtures can't be that expensive.
No, not if you're just talking about those two items. They're small, really small
Right, and
bathrooms.
we can't make them any bigger.
20,000.
No,
So we're
I mean,
just,
so there's not a lot of area.
that's all we're gonna do is upgrade the current
Right.
facility, so it's more of a commercial.
But you're right,
Yes.
whoever saw that, I saw that line too, of people waiting in line to use the firehouse.
Yes, I didn't get over to that side, so I didn't realize that was going on. So, the other thing is, I don't know if they realize that's where the porta-johns were, because usually they were out on the,
I don't think
on
it's-
the
front of the
street,
bays,
where they're,
right.
you know, out
Right.
where everybody could see them, so we thought, well, this would be a good way to let people know, and they were on the literature and stuff, but if people didn't look at the literature and look around at those.
He said he had a line in his restaurant.
And I guess I just keep thinking, we're gonna do all that remodeling upstairs
eating.
hopefully too, and that building's gonna get used a lot more, so it'd be nice to have decent restrooms in there for that purpose too.
Yeah, I think though we'd have to get quotes and come back and get more.
Correct.
Though I don't think there's enough in our public buildings account to do that unexpected project.
Okay, any other discussion?
Timeline, are we still looking candlelight walk? You know,
Yeah, the bid requires a completion date of November 21st.
and the fella told Patrick that that's doable as long as there's not delays. So,
That's the date of the
That's tight.
right. That's
the
why
date
we
of the
picked the
candlelight
date.
walk?
Yeah,
That's a tight
the-
schedule.
So it's a very tight schedule, and, you know, by giving us this authorization tonight, we can tell the guy tomorrow.
Start up.
Patrick checked with one of the references, was gonna try to check with a couple more, but it sounds, everything so far has been positive. But we can't do anything to hold it up. We gotta keep going.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
You're on a roll today.
Long break.
It was a long break, a lot of reflection. Next item is 14-147, expenditure over $15,000 for Epic Aviation. Keith, is this you or you?
It's me. Obviously, we didn't know this is a newer operation, we didn't know how much to put in, so we didn't put in enough for these ones.
And how are we doing on that? Are we doing pretty good sales historically, or do you know?
We're selling enough, we need to buy more to fill the tank.
That's all good.
And I mean, with the way it's priced, we price it more than what we're paying for the fuel, so the more fuel we sell is the good thing.
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 14-148, budget amendments. We have 8501, reduced 2014 appropriations for the Muni Court.
This came out of the budget hearing. They wanted to reduce this year's instead of changing next year's appropriation in order to make next year's balance. Remember that?
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 8538, anonymous donation for flowers.
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 2014-049, intensive supervision grant funds.
This comes up every year, this grant comes in the middle of the year, and we have to do the appropriation.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 2014-047 waste station funds.
This, I think, came out of the budget hearing too. We wanted to separate out the waste station into its own account, so we're for tracking, and this is the appropriations to do that.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 2014-048 funds for 120 North Elmwood Masonic.
Pretty self-explanatory.
This is the funds, over our break, we purchased the Masonic Temple, everybody's aware of that. And this is just to cover the costs associated with it.
Do we need the emergency clause in the sense that wasn't there a 30-day?
Appropriations take effect immediately without the emergency clause.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 8459 police insurance payouts.
That's the money from our car that drowned in the big flood.
Oh, the total-
25,000.
Okay, so that's the two together, the two payouts came at two separate times, okay.
One was for the vehicle and one was for the equipment.
I got you.
That's the two together.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Danny made a motion. Did he make a motion? I think he did. I think he did it right away before I, want to do it again, just in case?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, just in case, you never know. 6/14/149, 5-year capital improvement plan for the MCRC. Mr. Right here?
Thank you, Mr. President, yes. Last year was the first year this has been approved through Council and Board of Education. We'll continue to introduce every year as we go. The Rec Advisory does review this before it's brought to you. It has been reviewed as of July. In a meeting we had in May with Keith and David Chambers, we discussed the idea of having someone come in and estimate better what we're going to need in the next 5 to 10 years. Our last budget hearing, we discussed the possibility of raising the contributions to $140,000 after the 5-year payback from the schools. And this way we'll be able to justify that increase better if need be.
Questions? You're on that committee?
No, not the advisory, that's the rec center advisory.
Well, I mean, this is good news, so you believe after, is that enough to increase it by the 140, or is that?
Well, actually, that was suggested by Keith. We'll know better once we bring in, we're gonna hopefully use Bob Arnold for this, since he's done the last 3 large-scale projects for the rec center. Have him come in, talk to contractors and see exactly what they think we're gonna need. As you see, as the years go by, we push stuff forward that we didn't need, and then we bring stuff forward that we do need. This year, we just had enough to cover the filter failure we had back 3 months ago, different things like that. Luckily, that money was in place, so really, we're just setting aside some of the funds in a PO to pay back the schools for these repairs.
You're going to abstain, so.
Somebody else make the
motion.
Second.
Mr. Shields has to abstain on this one since he works for the schools. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Aye.
Motion carries. 14-150, then and now, for the fire department testing. This is a then and now. Pretty self-explanatory. Any questions on it?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 14-151, then and now, for railroad liability insurance. Same issue. You already paid it.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 14-152, to then and now, for Winthrop Construction for engineering, which is related to the railroad.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we get that. 14-153, income tax allocation adjustment. This came through our budget hearings, if you recall, with the fire department and the reallocation of the general purpose capital account by taking 0.5% out of that and putting that into the capital for the
307.
307 account. As a first request, Keith added a second one in there regarding transferring another 0.5% from the general purpose capital 389, which is the unanticipated capital. I guess we'll take them separately. The first one, let's talk about the 301 to 307, giving 0.5%, which over the 10-year period, I think gives enough money from the chart of the replacement of the fire engines should put enough money in there to cover the acquisitions. Now, 0.5% equals about
50,000 a year.
50,000 a year?
55. So
So that'll be going into the replacement for the fire capital account. Anybody, you guys remember all that? We talked about that? Okay, let's vote on that one first.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, the second one is Keith added here was the 301, taking another 0.5%, taking it down to 6.5%, which will put it about 350,000 going into the, is that correct?
650.
I mean, 650 going into the 301 account with another 50 going into the unanticipated capital. Right now, I think we almost have $1 million in that. And if you recall, we stopped it at $1 million a few years back.
We quit putting money in here when we got close to $1 million back in '08. I think over time, there's inflation, things are more expensive, that $1 million is not as much as it was then. We've also taken the pump over here out of it. This, I've always seen this as kind of our fund. You know, when you look back when the garbage truck's burned up, or if you have City Hall burned down or something like that, you're gonna have insurance settlement, but it's not gonna cover everything because it's gonna be amortized cost, not replacement cost. This gives us the ability to weather that kind of storm, and I think we need to replenish this.
Questions?
When was the last time we used money out of this account?
The pump at the court,
37,000. What was that, 40, 50? No, 35,000 we took out of there.
Oh, yeah. So it was early this year.
Yeah, earlier this year, yes.
So the balance right now is 1 million minus 35,000?
it was a shade under $1 million, so it's a little,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, maybe 950.
950 give or take.
In my personal opinion, I think that's fine. I think $1 million, that's a pretty good insurance fund. I understand Keith's concerns about the cost, but, I mean, $1 million, who knows what that, I mean, if we need to spend $1 million, we got big problems.
I mean, I guess I look at it as a twofold thing. The pump was the first time we took anything out of there. And as long as we're not gonna take anything out of there, then
Yeah.
just sit on $1 million is fine. If
Right.
we're gonna use it occasionally, then we're gonna have to put money in there. And when we decided to take that money out of it for the pump, I'm thinking, okay, we need to put money back so that we can
Right.
cover things like that.
I think that, yeah, right, I mean, the pump issue, because it was a flooding issue too, I mean, we have to start identifying when to use the money.
Right.
And that was probably one of the times that was most appropriate to use that money. Knock on wood, I hope we don't have too many of those, but he's right, we never know, we might, but I'm still pretty comfortable with 950 in there. And, you know, if we want to give it to me, we can put another 50,000 there, but I guess we could just do a transfer from 301 if we wanted to for 50 grand.
Or set a threshold. I mean, we said we'd like to keep $1 million in there, but if it gets below 900,000 or 850,000, then we could say, let's revisit the reallocation.
Well, I think the next time we anticipate spending out of the unanticipated capital, then we can make a decision.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. So I guess we got to vote on it, right? So is there a motion?
Or do we,
Or do you want to take, I mean, I guess we don't have to make a
we don't
motion.
take any
I'm
action?
fine, leave
Is
it
there
the way it
anybody
is.
for it? Is that as is? Everybody's okay with that as is? Well, Keith, good try.
You take 50,000 out here, 50,000 out there, someday you'll be looking at this going, where'd that $1 million go? We don't need to approve this, I talked to Greg about it, this next item on the agenda, you can move on to one after.
Oh, we don't need to do 14154?
No.
Okay. 14155, approve revised job description for cable TV director. Jared? Senior?
I'll take this.
Mayor?
This was presented to the advisory commission for the cable office. How the job, the only thing that changed is what's in bold. And unbeknownst to me, I kind of treated Jared the same as the other department heads, and as questions came up, I took the day-to-day direction. And then when we had an issue within the cable office there that required us to look at each of the job descriptions, it became aware to me that he really reported to this advisory commission that meets every other month, which was not very conducive to day-to-day operations. So we presented it to the advisory commission. They recommended it. We presented it to Civil Service Commission. They recommended it. Now it's before the council and the advisory board that the day-to-day operations come under the mayor's direction, but are then still reviewed by the advisory commission.
The advisory commission would still, that's who he reports to annually for,
Yes.
okay.
And they do his evaluations and all those other things. It's just, as questions come up, it's hard to sit on things sometimes or get a hold of one of them.
Questions?
It's on the school board agenda tonight, too.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Move to approve?
Second.
Actually, I'm okay with this.
Oh, you can?
It's both
Okay.
of us, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
here we go.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 14-156, purchase of one 2014 Ford Police Interceptor SUV. This is what we just previously discussed about the water damage to the one vehicle replacement cost. A little extra money has to come out to do this one, 10,000 more, or maybe 9,000 more, to get it fully equipped. And I guess it's do we need to replace, we need an emergency clause in this, don't we?
No, because the build-out's not happening
I
yet.
got
We
you.
can't order them until
I got you. 'Cause I was wondering if I had to replace it in a hurry, okay.
Yeah, move to
we
approve.
can, but you can't
Second.
get them.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 14-157, purchase of one Smeo fire pumper with aerial device. This is a cheap one.
Yeah, this is that demo unit we talked about during the budget hearings. I did request the emergency clause because they have an 8-10 month build period, so they're fighting at the bit to get it started. The big show is in April in Indianapolis, and there's a couple, April, May is when they're gonna be having shows. So for them to get it built in time, they're gonna need to get moving on it. And I didn't include, they had a proposal for apparatus, kind of like a one-page contract, just to secure it. I did not put, I don't know if the mayor needs permission or just passing this, getting the PO and give him permission to sign that, or, so he does need to sign it or get special permission, we have to roll that into it.
So really quickly, 600, oh,
So we would need the monies and authorization under the agreement.
so it's 625,000, they're building it now, it's gonna be used for shows, and it's never gonna be used, there's gonna be hardly any, they can't sell it as new.
There'll be road
because-
miles on it, but the pump will never be used, it'll just go from convention center, so actually, that one looks like 2 conventions they're gonna use it at over the weekends, and
So they'll just drive it there, drive it back,
Drive it
and,
back.
how, what would it be new without having?
we're saving about $100,000 doing it this way.
And this is gonna be, no customization to it, or is there customization?
Correct. I've actually cut back on it. That's why they're pushing me. If they're gonna build it for themselves, they want a bigger motor and some more whistles and bells and a big generator. We just don't use that. So that's how we got it down to that 6 1/4 figure for us.
And this aerial device, how far does it?
65 foot, not as big as the big ladder truck, obviously, but it's more of a elevated waterway. It's a rescue ladder. The big ladder truck can put 3 or 4 guys on a tip. This one's only rated for 2. But if we're in a residential area, which we're planning on putting out at Station 3 hopefully, this will be used there. If there's a rescue, they can get it up the window quick enough.
Now, does the ladder one have a 4-inch nozzle, or a 2? I mean, how big is this nozzle on it?
This will flow, it's a maximum, it's 1,000 gallons at the tip. All of our trucks are capable of that. The pump's a standard pump through our whole fleet. Basically just having an elevated waterway, which the other trucks don't have. And this would keep up. When ladder 2, the old snorkel, it's gonna die one of these days. We're still trying to keep it in service. When that dies, this will take its place. It'll keep our ISO rating up. We won't have any break in that continuity.
Does everybody remember the discussion of budgets, questions?
And then they're gonna do this like a standard when we purchase. The chassis is actually made by another company, so they're anticipating probably around December thereabouts. We paid the $214,275 for the chassis. The Schmiel bought it off, Spartan makes the chassis, they make a lot of fire trucks, military equipment. They would pay them and have to pay a loan on that. So basically, we're just paying for our chassis now, so we don't get incurred any interest on that.
You mentioned, are we changing colors?
Yeah, it'll be red. Well, we made that commitment when we got the Montville trucks, and it seems like it's a win-win. So there are a couple old guys, most everyone loves it, so.
Loves red, too. We play with the little fire trucks, they're always red, but, I don't know, I don't play with the yellow one.
Does it cost
So
more?
eventually the whole fleet will be.
Eventually, the whole fleet would,
Does it cost more either way?
actually, I
Right, more
didn't know it at the
expensive.
time, but we paid about $8,000 for that custom yellow on that ladder truck when we bought it. They rolled it in, it wasn't itemized, but when I asked if we painted it red, they go, that's easy, but if you want it that yellow, it's a custom paint that they have to have blended.
Yes, we want to go to red. Any other questions?
Move to approve the purchase price and for the mayor to enter into the agreement with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 14158, reroute Buckeye Trail through Medina. Mr. Worley?
Patrick Hayes is here today from the Buckeye Trail. Basically, it was founded in 1959. It's about 1,400 miles long. Right now, it goes north of Medina, and I submitted a proposed trail that'll go down Abbeville on 18 east to the square, through the square, and then we'll connect to the Champion Creek Multi-Purpose Trail. From there, it'll go up Guilford, and then further east on 18 towards Lake Medina. So this will be at no expense to the city. We'd just like to get a resolution.
Support.
Rerouting the trail, it's all on public property sidewalks, where there's no sidewalk present, it's on the berm. And then they mark out the trails using blazes.
Questions?
Is that consistent with other areas of the Buckeye Trail, getting on sidewalks, on the berms and all
It
that?
is. We prefer to be in the dirt, but it's tough in Medina. So for us, sidewalk is considered off the road.
Right.
So that's a big plus for us. It's much safer on the sidewalk than it is walking Sleepy Hollow Road or Hamilton Road or Marks Road, which is where the trail currently is.
And in the future, if we do extend their, government entities work together to extend the Champion Creek Trail on the back section of Smith Road or something like that, we can adjust it down the road. I think it's a great idea. I think it brings people into town here, puts Medina even more on the map, and
That's true.
It's over 1,400 miles long, all the way around the state.
Probably should go walk.
We should go. We have a lot.
Longest route trail in the United States.
wow.
Are you in? You walking this summer? or no?
You don't think I can?
No, I think you did it.
Driver time summers over?
Move to approve.
Paid leave?
Second. Any other questions? I think it's a good
Is there anything
addition.
else they want to tell us?
Guys, do you need additional information you have for us regarding the trail, or?
I can give you any information you want.
I think it's gonna be a good addition to the city. I think that's not gonna
Well,
be the issue.
let me show you an example. This is what we traditionally follow. It's a 2x6 blue blaze that we paint on utility poles. We've done this for 50 years and have never had a problem with it. In the woods, we paint these on trees. There are places where we don't have utility poles. We have a decal. This one happens to be Buckeye Trail and North Country Trail where we coexist. And we do that for about 1,000 miles within Ohio. But for here, since you're not North Country Trail, we would just have a decal that says Buckeye Trail.
Mhm. Good. That's good. Thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah,
All in favor?
impressive.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, thank you.
14159 Lake Medina and Reagan Parkway Trail Connector. Mr. Worley, you're on again.
Thank you, Mr. President. In August of 2010, council authorized joint filing of the grant application with the Medina County Park District. Tom James is here today. The Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency for the Transportation Enhancement Program grant for the trail to connect Lake Medina to Reagan Parkway. The original estimate for the grant match was $31,231. We were awarded the grant and now are responsible for a portion that comes in around $49,600, an increase of about $18,000 for the project. There were a variety of factors that increased our match, including ODOT requiring the bridges to be widened from 10 feet to 14 feet. A second bridge was added over the Rocky River. It's approximately 100 feet long, and we had to use outside consultants for engineering and design and construction management for the project. A variety of funding options were discussed in 2010 to cover the grant match, including parks carry forward. Looking for some guidance on where to come up with the funding for this portion of the grant match. As Parks carried forward, is currently committed to cemetery building, pool improvements, and some other projects. Tom, do you have an update on where we're at?
Well, I don't, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So, I guess I have a question.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd say, I mean, I think when we originally voted on it in 2010, we were sold on it by using carry forward, at least I was.
Yep.
So I guess, I don't know if there, we got to the question is, well, if you have no carry forward left, then what do we do? Go ahead.
Well, can you explain the need of the 100-foot bridge on why that came into play?
Well, I think, did they get the spreadsheet information?
Yeah, they have the spreadsheet.
The true increase in cost was not, that increased our cost. The true increase in cost here is the cost of construction inspection and the engineering requirements that ODOT placed on the project that they didn't indicate they would place on it when we received the grant. So our costs have increased quite a lot more than that. So what we're asking for is for the city to come up with, basically when we changed the bridge, added the bridge to take the road, the trail off of the shared road portion on Route 3, that's the cost of the extra bridge. That actually decreased the city's share of the project because our share went much higher by the cost of the bridge, about $100,000. So, you know, if you look on the spreadsheet, you'll see that the initial, if you look just at the construction cost, it's at $29,365.44 for the city's portion, and that's from where the trail ends Reagan Parkway through the intersection at Reagan and 3. And then we pick up at the southeast corner there and take it on to Route 18. So the additional costs that have been incurred are just for the engineering, design, and construction management. And those are allocated based on what the city's portion of the entire project is, which is 9.57%.
You know what would really help me here is to see a map of what you're talking about, to where this bridge actually is.
The bridge that was a mistake. You're incurring no cost for the bridge, the Park District's incurring that cost.
Okay, well, but we still have to pay for the engineering for it, though, right? Or
No,
contribute to the engineering.
this is strictly the portion of the trail that's being built in the city portion is 9.57% of the project. So we're asking you for 9.57% of the engineering and construction management costs.
No, but why do they require this bridge? I'm not fully understanding why this additional bridge.
The original project had the trail coming up through the valley to the Granger Road, Route 3 intersection. And there was going to be shared use on both sides of Route 3 on the road to get over to the intersection. We had a couple of public hearings about it. There were some objections raised by some of the folks that attended that was not a safe route. When I went back and looked at it, we concurred that it would be better to keep the people off the road as a shared road in that area. So we added the bridge. But again, the cost, if you want me to outline what the additional engineering is for that, I don't know that I can. We had to have an outside engineer company do the trail plan for the entire route. We didn't, that decision to do the bridge was done before the engineering was done, the contracted engineering.
Tom, what's the overall length from parking lot to Reagan Parkway there?
It's got about 1.25 miles.
Are there any, see, this is where a map would really help me so I can see this whole thing here. I know there's a lot of trails and things like that in the area that people can use. Is there anything that we can use as an alternative to put in this bridge? Because, I really have a problem with ODOT coming in here and telling us that we have to put, widen bridges and add bridges after we had already agreed to this other set of plans here. And then a third entity that has no skin in this game at all saying thou shalt. I got a big problem with that.
I understand that. NOAC is still putting $832,000 into this project, which is about $275,000 more than the original route. They did help with the cost of that bridge by putting some more money into the project. But the federal dollars that are involved in this require things like, when we put the application in 2010, they changed the national, I don't know if Pat knows the bicycle standard, AASHTO.
AASHTO, right.
They changed the standards from 10-foot bridges to 14-foot bridges because they said you had to have the same berm on the bridge that you have on the trail.
And so often when we're using federal dollars, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but on even our street projects in the past where we've got federal funds, ODOT was the managing organization that set up the engineering and so forth, or approved it. Am I correct on that? Like our Smith Road project and the Huntington Street project?
Well, both of those, we took over, we're called, locally, we had to apply and get permission to be administered project locally.
But then we have to follow some ODOT standards?
Correct, yeah, the engineering we did, we had to follow.
So that answers your question as far as why.
Yeah, but at least we knew what the rules were going into the game. Okay, this here, I look at this as, here's the rules, we bid on it, we get it, oh, we're changing the rules. That's what I've got a problem with. But we said, yeah, we're gonna give this much money to do this, and then they say, hey, great, but no, you're really gonna do this, and we didn't have a say in that. I've got a problem with that.
I thought I was helping you out, but I guess I wasn't.
No, you weren't. Thank you, I appreciate it, but no, I still have a problem
Well,
with
my
that.
bigger issue is, okay, where's the money coming from? And I think, Keith, we were just talking, Jim and I, regarding the 108 account, the wayfinding program, there's probably monies appropriated in there that we never spent with respect to the signage, because we were just talking about that, we saved a lot of money on that. But I don't think you're probably going to answer that question.
I don't, can we pay for trails out of 108?
Well, that's one of the memo here that says we can. We have a memo
Yeah,
from.
these are where Greg Hannon said he met with you guys and came up with these different funding options.
And Tom, I'm
Five or six.
Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, we put in a mile, each section was about approximately a mile long. Weren't they about 650,000? And we had a couple bridges?
Yeah,
Does that seem close?
that does seem.
So that, I think it's a great project, Tom. I mean, it's gonna add to Lake Medina, but we're close to 1.2 million for a mile trail, or a little bit over, so.
But the city share of that.
No, I don't believe me. I mean, NOAC's put in 832,000, which is a lot of money.
Right. They're doing 73%, we're doing 9%.
Right.
The county's doing the
Right.
rest. So, keep in mind that this also is eventually to tie Reagan Park through Lake Medina, through Suma, over to the trail that you mentioned.
Right.
So, for $18,000 to walk away from this, it's gonna have some adverse effects on a variety of things. I know we're not happy about it, but sometimes these things are beyond our control as well.
So I guess the question is, can we take it from the wayfinding?
I don't know that we still have unspent appropriation from wayfinding. This was 4 years ago.
Like we discussed, I think the signs, once we started using Medina signs, we saved a lot
had
of money.
saved quite a bit compared to what was budgeted, I
Right.
thought.
There was some amount of money left. I can't tell you the number off the top of my head.
I understand there was money left, but I don't know if we've already spent, I mean, it's been 4 years, I don't know if we already spent that on something else.
I don't recall.
We did the welcome signs with them.
All the remaining portions of it? You think we did the welcome sign?
No. we bought the welcome signs with the wayfinding money. I don't know how much those were and how much is left over. But there were 4 or 5
Right.
recommendations. What are the others?
General purpose capital, unanticipated, but we've got to put money into it if we're gonna take money out of it. And then Tim, back in 2010, said we could take it out of parks, but it wouldn't not be able to be completed until 2013.
Well, no, he was saving up money for that.
Right.
Right.
But we've used that, but again, that's something else, we've used that for other things, it's just like the wayfinding. I don't know that we haven't already used that for something else.
I just don't remember, I mean, I remember when we did the welcome signs and we looked at that, I don't ever remember anybody else coming and saying, well, there's some money here we could take from that. So I guess, I was thinking there should still be some money there.
Yeah, in my 5 years, that's the only thing we went back to wayfinding for.
Because it was a lot of money there.
It was, it was so expensive after that first round of the way.
And those weren't real expensive. I
Right.
don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, I guess the question is, does it have to be voted today? Can we check that number out? Do we, you know, what's the urgency? What's the timeline of this
The
project?
trail's under construction, it's, you know, it's not urgent, there's, basically, we're paying bills out. This is gonna be a reimbursement to the park district because we're paying the bills.
I think if we find the correct account, does anybody, I guess, have an issue with that? I mean, I would do wayfinding. I'm a little more skeptical of just doing a new appropriation, what the mayor indicates, but I think we could find the money from the other, from things that we've already have listed here, that specifically wayfinding possibly to cover that cost.
There's still some left in irrigation.
And that's in here too.
Wipe that out before the night's
Just
over.
throwing it out there. We're looking for areas.
There is,
Not
there's
saying
money here
all
for,
of it,
there's
but-
money here for that too. So I think, why don't we do that? Why don't we look at the wayfinding, see what's available in the 108 account out of the wayfinding, because of the favorable bids, they said 90 to 100,000. We bought some signs for the entranceways to the city, but it wasn't 90 to 100,000. So my guess is there should be at least the amount of money to cover this in there. Maybe. I know you're shaking your head no, but
Well, I mean,
Maybe.
it's 4 years ago, I don't know
I
what
don't
else,
remember.
and it wouldn't necessarily have come back as this is coming from Wake-Up finding, it would have been unappropriated funds in 108, I don't know.
Well, what year did we do the welcome signs, do you remember? It's definitely been during your time, it's,
No, it's before my time. Before my time. And Keith, I don't think this was kicked back in. I think they set aside a PO for wayfinding.
And I'll check POs,
Yeah.
I just,
And when the bids come in, they were lower, so then the money was still there of unappropriated. Because that's where we took it out of. Patrick actually had the PO, and we took the money out of there to pay for those welcome signs at the entrances to the city.
well, let's do that. I think, is everybody comfortable with that, or?
And then come back to finance next
Right.
time.
Yeah. Get the answers then. I think the idea is a good idea. We try to make sure we take the money instead of just taking it from 301. If we have money available, let's take it from 108.
And you all don't see a need for Mr. James to have to come back again,
No.
right? We're just taking
Unless
care
he's
of
got
our
a
money
map.
issues.
He's got a cool map.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't think to bring it back.
Paul wants that map.
Or a lower number, you
I
know.
want to see this.
Like what time? Okay, quickly.
Hey, Tom, real quick, that property that was on Lake Medina that was asked, that did some improvements to their property, and we gave them type of permit, did they go back and do any corrections on?
All they're required to do is stop using it
That was it.
stop mowing it and make it look like it's reverted to nature, and as far as I know, that's what's happened.
Your kayak guy, too. All right, we'll do that. Thanks, Tom, for coming.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, then 14,160 expenditure for 15,000 for Residence Parks Department. Mr. Lord?
This is an increase on purchase order for our fall application of fertilizer on the athletic fields. It's a synthetic product that we've used for the past few years, and Residex is the only company that carries it.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, on the back page now, we finished the front, let's go to the back. 14,161 expenditure for 15,000 for winter equipment streets department. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. President. And you can see from the quote, we need to order steel blades For the plows, here shortly is a 5-week delivery, especially with the hardware, the nuts, the bolts, and so forth, so it's about $19,489.
Nino, I noticed on West Park Boulevard, we're getting those rust marks on the concrete as well. Will this eliminate that in the future? Because I know some of the neighborhoods over in Ward 3 have that on, I don't want to say fairly new, but newer concrete, and now West Park, which is
I don't know that answer, Mark, to
4
be honest with
years
you.
old, 3?
Yeah, a little older. That's,
It's all over
Five
from the
times
blades.
Huh?
It comes from the blades, you know, then.
Is that what we're buying here? Those
Well, these
types
are
of
grade
blades?
8 bolts and steel, so they're high quality. I don't know, I guess I can ask that question, I don't know the answer offhand.
I just think it's a shame that those roads have those marks on them. You can get them out anymore or not, but for a fairly new road to have those rust marks.
I agree.
Bring that up.
I would with you on having to replace sections of it already too. Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 14162, discussion, just a submittal of bid for CPF contract. I put this in because, as you all know, the CPF is going to be bid out. We thought maybe that the other cities would be involved, and it doesn't look like that's going to be. Does that mean that we can't be involved? I don't know. I don't think so, but I just wanted to see if there's any kind of interest whatsoever in talking about the CPF, because we have no control over it. And as long as we have no control over it, we have no control over the cost. Right now, a private individual operates it, they're making a profit. Does that say that a governmental entity can't do it and do it better? I don't know why not. I mean, I guess that's the question. As long as you have somebody to operate it that has the experience to operate it, I think that satisfies one of the bid requirements in the request. But it's a big undertaking, there's no doubt about it. But the question is, what do we want to do? Do we want to just leave it up to the process and have other people dictate what we do, or do we want to take a shot at dictating our own future? That's the only question I raise.
I think that's something that we can handle.
I was just gonna say, who's gonna handle it for the city?
We'd have to hire, it would be, you'd have to have a person who is knowledgeable in it. We wouldn't handle it, it would have to be somebody running it. Because right now you have a private company running it that makes a profit, so you'd have to have somebody in there that knows what they're doing, hire a person, and they would run it and charge the fees through the whole county. And then we would hopefully save money on that, and then if nobody else wants to get involved, the savings would reduce our fee only in the city. So our tip fees, if we run it properly, for what they are today, could be down, down to $30, whatever, $20.
Why did the other communities back out or weren't
Yeah, that's
interested?
the question I
I
have.
mean,
I can answer that. I was meeting with the service directors from Brunswick and Wadsworth. Chris Easton, as you know, retired. His successor, we were supposed to meet, he didn't make it for a meeting. I know he's being overwhelmed with all the utilities they have, so really there was not a whole lot of interest there. That just kind of died off. And then with Brunswick, I was meeting with Mr. McNamara. They, like us, have been overwhelmed with flooding calls. They had 2 tornadoes. Their focus mainly has been their storm system and trying to correct things there. And it started hot, and it just kind of died off, to be honest with you, and that's where we're at. And I understand from the county, they are not a bidder. It's going to, as the bid's let, the county is not going to submit a bid on their own behalf, so.
So we're gonna be pretty much guaranteed to be around the same price or higher
That I don't know, but.
So if we don't bid on it, we're gonna be exactly where we are.
today.
If we don't get control of it, we'll be exactly where we are right now with whoever takes over.
Possibly, but the honest answer is that to bid it, you have to have a plan. I mean, we really don't have a plan with respect to how we're going to run it, who's going to run it, and.
Do we need to have the plan before we bid?
I think you kind of should. That's a big undertaking.
Yeah, how are you gonna bid on it?
That's a big,
Well, I mean,
big
I don't mean not to have a
undertaking.
plan, but I mean, to have a complete, like you could walk in and take over, we wouldn't have to have that. We would just
Well,
need
I
to
guess-
have the operational part to address whatever the bidding is.
Partially, I think in retrospect.
Well, I guess the answer is, I would think, can we do it where they're doing it today? Absolutely, because they're doing it for $61 a ton right now. So the question would be, where do you get those people? Because you probably hire some of the people that are working there already.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not gonna quit their job and not have a job. The question is, you have to have somebody qualified to run it. And can we find somebody qualified to run it? Because you have to be able to run it for what they're doing it today, because they're making a profit. It would be impossible in my mind to realize that we couldn't do the same thing what they're doing today without making a profit, because that would mean that it doesn't make any sense. Because right now, they're taking some of the stuff and the recycling's way down, they're not getting the money back, there's
It's
a lot
going
of
right
those-
to the landfill more than half.
There's a lot of those issues where the reason you do the recycling is to get the money. So, I mean, I don't know, I guess the big question is, do we want to have a third party that is controlled by us operate it? Because that's what we have to come down to.
And I agree that I think that's the way we go, but in the line of work that I'm in, this is kind of parallels. And if you don't have a plan, and you don't know who's gonna run it, and you don't know what your costs are gonna be, and you go in and you make a bid, you're gonna lose your shirt. And we're not in a position to be losing our shirt yet. If we can, when's the bid date coming in?
3 weeks, September, I believe, 3rd week of September.
I've been talking about this for like a year.
Okay. Yeah, but we didn't know what was going on for that year until just.
Well, it's not new.
Yeah.
We had hoped all the cities.
I think about it.
Right, yeah, we had
fairness.
anticipated all the cities. What I recommend is we start now, getting our plan together, so when the next bid cycle comes out, we'll know whether we want to bid or not, and if we're ready to bid, we'll have our plan. But if we go in now, and yeah, it's a feel-good moment, trust me, and we're gonna save all this money, and then you start executing, you're gonna lose your shirt, guaranteed.
But I don't think we'd lose more than they're spending now, because the current operator's making a profit.
Okay, true, but
But
all
there-
the liability that goes along with
If
it.
I may, and not to interrupt, but there's some guidelines with trucking, the operator has to have the semis, the trucking, there's some things that were changed. We don't have transfer trailers right now, we don't have semis, we don't have any of that. I mean, there's a lot.
It's the county's
Again, we need a
building.
plan.
So
Correct.
even if we wanted to take it over, which I'm not really willing to do, we're then renting or leasing the space from the county and all the antiquated equipment unless we replace it or revise it. So we're walking into that knowing all of those things. And I think Paul is exactly right, and Bill, that if we had the three cities together, it'd be one thing, because then you're spreading the risk over all of us.
Right.
But for us to go in on our own, knowing what all of the problems are initially, and trying to fight that off, I just don't think that would be reasonable. Not 3 weeks. If it was next May or June, we might be able to do enough analysis and study other places and come up with a better plan. And you're right, John, we have talked about it for quite a while, but the cities all along were telling us, yeah, we're in. We want the same thing you want, and then every time it's time to get together.
Well, I'm just fearful, because I think this is gonna happen, we're gonna have to pay $75 a ton next couple of years. Just be ready.
How long is that contract for?
5 years?
I'm not sure I didn't actually see the
5
actual
years?
Or 10 years?
guidelines. I don't.
It was like a 5-year with a 3-year add-on, something.
Well, they had a couple of options. They had an
Yeah.
option with equipment, without equipment, there's a different bid options you could do.
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the county asking for a higher percentage now of recycling? Up to
Yes, the
30
guidelines have been tightened.
30% or something?
Correct.
Well, I guess the original contract we have now asked for a certain level, and it was never enforced, so it
Well,
doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
When you just said hold the commissioner's feet to the fire,
We haven't done that yet.
And we haven't. No, we have not.
Well, it's difficult to do that.
Well,
No, I just bring it up because we gotta be aware of this, I guess, is my only point, to bring everybody aware that this is gonna happen. Be prepared that we're gonna be increasing the sanitation rates to cover the costs, because it's gonna happen.
I don't think there's anything we can do right now with only 3 weeks to go, but I think the
All right.
reason I asked how long the contract was, I think we should start thinking about 5 years
I
down the
think we
road.
will keep an eye on it.
Working towards this and working with Brunswick and Wadsworth to try to come up with a plan.
Because as mentioned, we use about 3 cities, a majority, 60% of the waste goes there from the 3 cities. So we have the biggest stake in it, the 3 cities.
well, didn't this, go ahead.
I was surprised to hear about Wadsworth because I know 2 friends of mine that are on their council, they've talked about it and they were, last I heard, they were all for it. So,
Yeah, that's
but
not-
with 3 weeks
That's
left,
not what I'm getting, but.
I mean, it's too late now.
Well, that may be, this may just speak of reality, but it is disappointing because we won't have any more control than we have right now. We can say whatever we want, but then it's like the water. It's just, you want to raise it, you're going to raise it. Who's been there? Who's been in that facility?
CPF?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody been in there? I mean, you look around in there? Have you seen what they do in there?
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody, Jared Fry ought to go in there and video that thing and put it on a program. If people could see, because I still contend that people put their trash out thinking that there's an efficient and effective recycling program going on. And it isn't the case. If you could see what they do with that trash when it goes in, you'd know darn well, it is not. It is. It's coming in, most of it getting dumped, and the stuff that gets dumped to get recycled, if you looked at it, you know most of that's not gonna get recycled when you see what that pile of stuff looks like.
Well, I think, and also, they've been taking their expensive stuff, metals, out before it got in there, and people have been taking it that work there. I think.
There's been some scrapping going on, you might say.
Yeah, they've been scrapping their expensive stuff, taking it. So, of course, we lose out as the end users, because the value is already going to somebody else's pocket.
You also lose out if the stuff goes in there in trucks, and it's simply, this is what you've got in the truck, and it goes in, and nobody has any idea what you've got in that, they have no idea what's actually in that truck, other than the weight in, weight out.
Right, with the driver's discretion saying it's landfill, and
I
that's
think
what
we
goes on.
should press that. Maybe I'll set up a meeting with the 3 cities after this, and so we can keep it on the radar, and we can talk about it. Kathy, can you remind me of that, because I forget. So we'll have a meeting, set up a meeting with the 3 city councils, so we can, everybody get on the same page.
I mean, and you made a comment, there's nothing we can do. I think right there is one step. There could be other things. I mean, I've heard the county talking about the blue bag program or something, putting recyclables in certain colored bags to make it easier once it goes to the CPF. I mean, there could be some things that each community puts in place that makes the CPF run cheaper.
If you hit it on the head, if we do that, you have to be guaranteed that
well, then
they're
you
going to
gotta,
lessen the cost.
that's
and
why you
do it
gotta
for them, make it easier for them, and then they keep the cost the same. That would be good.
And the blue blank program has.
All right, well, let's move on with that. This is something we got to keep in mind, and we probably should work with the cities to get that accomplished maybe next time. If it doesn't change, and I don't have any high aspirations that it will. 14-163 discussion to place City of Medina on city water towers.
Yes.
This was you, Mr. Colzar.
Yes. Now, I said City of Medina, it could just be Medina only. If you go to almost every, I don't want to say almost every, but a lot of communities have the city name or township or wherever it is up on their water towers. And I just think for the Progress Drive, South Court Tower, and the Lake Road, for those the state routes coming in, even Progress is Marks Road, but I think to me it's a sense of community. Our tanks are bare, and I think just having City of Medina or just Medina only on those, I think it helps identify our community. And like I said, it brings a sense of community to this area, and believe it or not, I think we have a lot of people that love this community, but I think this helps identify our community even more. And
Well, I think wasn't there a discussion on South Court of Acme doing something, or was that?
yeah,
Acme did throw that out at one point.
Or did they?
They might be interested in putting their logo on there and then paying for it, the upkeep of it.
To put their upkeep of the exterior of the.
which I don't agree with, but I mean, I
Yeah.
just want to put it up for discussion. I talked to Patrick Patton a little bit about it. A company that could perform something like this is, Pat, I don't know if they'll be in the area in the next
Yeah, actually,
month
Mark,
or so.
they got back to me this afternoon. I forwarded the email about 4 o'clock.
Oh.
They are the company that is doing the interior painting for South Court tank for us next month. So I just asked them for some budget numbers, and I actually asked them for the 4 tanks, including Coons, but you're not interested in that.
Well, I thought that was kind of tucked away,
It
that
is.
really.
Well, so for those other 3, and these are just budget numbers, it's not a formal proposal, but basically saying for those 3, it'd be about $28,500.
For all 3?
Lock Medina, yeah.
And that's
No, you
2
did
sides
say-
of the tank, or is that just one side of the tank?
It's
or-
1 5 6-fold letters, block lettering, one side, one color, pretty simple.
It's expensive. But instead of killing it, I mean, can you table it and see if
Yeah,
there's
we
any
can-
other options to?
The one thing I'd note, he did mention since they're gonna be in town next month, and the South Court one could be done relatively cheaply.
Well, what's relatively?
Well, that one alone is 9,500. However, there's a thing in the contract where they may or may not have to do some exterior work, some repair work. If they have to do that, they have to put the rigging out. And he said, if we have to put the rigging out for your project, it'd only be 3,500 to put that on the South Court.
On one side?
On one side.
Facing what way?
Well,
To the neighbors? or to the
ideally,
street?
I was thinking, depending on, for instance, South Court would be on the south side and the north side of the tank.
Well, there's only one side it'd have to be on, then the
Well,
east
that's,
side, I guess.
that's,
That's just one 3,500, so if we're gonna do both, it'd be 7,500.
7,500 times 2 is 7,000.
500 for
Leave it up to the
All right, we'll hold off on that.
if you guys don't mind. I don't know, I guess I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts.
I think it's a bad idea. I mean, I think we're just, people I think are visually confronted with all kinds of signs and letters and words, and water towers are water towers. Let them just be water towers. We're a very classy community. It's not like we gotta stick our name on, we have these beautiful wayfaring signs, we have the entrance signs. That's what we should have. I mean, I don't think we need to plaster more words and letters up. I don't wanna look at them, and I live on South Court. And I think it's a waste of money. It's a water tower. It's a water tower. That's all it is.
You sticking with that? I got his opinion.
That's what I asked for.
I mean, I guess I would rather have somebody else pay for it if we're gonna do it. I think that, if, I don't know if I want an Acme sign over there. I guess.
I don't like that.
I mean, you could do like Firestone, have a big golf
Mr.
ball.
Huber's got a
on top of
question
it.
or a
He wants
comment.
yes.
Traditionally, these signs on water towers actually started with VFR Aviation, where pilots kind of used the town tower to navigate, and that's really where that started. Now, in this time period, you have GPS navigation, and so pilots don't rely on that kind of dead reckoning anymore, and frankly, a lot of cities have gone away from the expenditure of the money for the maintenance of those signs, but that is how that started.
Well, we'll table it and we'll discuss it again, notwithstanding Bill's comments. Okay, 21-14-164, 30th Anniversary Candlelight Walk Celebration. This was a request coming through me, through Matt Wiederhold, Main Street Medina. I guess it's the 30th anniversary of the Main Street, of the Candlelight Walk. So he's requesting funding, so I just threw out $12,500 based upon his materials of $6,905 that he wanted to include to finish off a few of the lighting around the square, which would be enough to probably do a rental of a lift or whatever else he wanted to do with respect to the Candlelight Walk. So I leave it at that. You either for it or you're against it, or you might want to give a little less money, but there's not much to say about it. Besides, it has drawn a lot of people to the square.
Well, if I can go first, what we really need is for the council to set aside some money for the ongoing maintenance of what we have.
Correct.
Before we buy anything more, because it's fallen on Nino and his staff. And, every time a strand goes out, or, this snowflake goes out, or whatever, he's got plenty to do without this additional burden. And we don't mind having an electrician, contracting with them and saying, okay, how about you're on call, and as these things go on, you come out and take care of it. But to stop all city operations and expect to go check these plugs in every end, and what got a little bit of water in it, or what squirrel chewed what wire, things like that is just a little bit too much.
He enjoys it.
I mean, for what we have already, let alone to add any more to it. So that's a concern that and if you guys want to set aside some money for that, we're all about the project and that. It's just, we can only juggle so much.
So what do you guys want to do?
I'm all about the project too, but I guess I wondered, I love it, and I'd love to see all this be done, but at what point does Main Street need to raise some of this money privately, I think, rather than, we are kind of like the pocketbook, and we do a great deal of donating, and our benefit's extraordinary, but at some point, if you look at other groups in town, I mean, there has to be other places to go to get some of these funds in order to do this. And I just don't know, because Matt's not here, I mean, what kind of energy's gone into doing that before they come to us?
I was also wondering, how come we never had a donation box set out during the Candlelight Walk? That if you'd like it, donate money in a box that he could, because I would imagine some people out of town might drop a 20 in it to say, keep it up.
And I think the mayor's right, that the maintenance of what you have, if we want it to look good, we need to maintain what we have, and it really shouldn't fall on the city, I think, to continually cover that cost and the labor cost of doing that.
Well, I think once they go up, we're probably looking at 4 to 5 years before we're gonna have to replace the wiring, unless they come up with UVA wiring, because it's gonna dry rot at a period of time, and it's just not gonna work.
But I mean, I called, how many times did I call you last year?
Quite a few.
Quite a few, because
And I appreciate the mayor's comments, and I thank the mayor for that, and he's right, because we have 21 points of power,
Way too many.
and so that needs to be consolidated
Way
to,
And plus if
we
it
started out with the
rains,
4
right.
boxes on the square, which was great, we put timers in, but then we branched out to the photo cells, and then that was hardwired, and our guys are not electricians, and we're not gonna send them in there to disconnect that, you just can't cut the wire, and that was part of the problem with the lights
Well,
staying
yeah, and
illuminated for
we
a long
spend
time.
this much money on it, and then when it rains, half of them aren't on.
Sometimes, yes,
Well,
they pop.
I like both Bill's, or the mayor's idea, and John's idea. The idea of Main Street stepping up more, at least showing us what they're doing to promote the Candlelight Walk. I'm talking fund-wise. And maybe this year, the amount of money that we were going to agree to increase the lighting, at least a portion of that be set aside to hire a contractor,
To maintain it, right?
an electrician to, on a yearly basis, maintain it and consolidate the entry points for the electrical source. I think that.
But I think we should also indicate that we would like some kind of fundraising, whether boxes or whatever, for people who come from out of town all Christmas season, to have a place to donate or something, some signs or how to do it, or I think more people are apt to give when they're there, rather than take down information and mail something. So if we could have something readily available that they can give, maybe it's in the restroom, who knows? If people go through there, you giving box in the restroom or some kind of lock box. Who knows? Because if people see that, maybe a placard or something that they would do it, that would be great.
And that's a good idea. The only thing is, we're running out of time here shortly because with the maintenance, it has to be walked through here shortly.
Kimberly, did you have a question?
Yes, at the International Fest, the Main Street did have a donation box there.
For?
Set up at their table, but I don't think it was specifically for the lights, it was just for donations in general. So I think the question would be to go back to Matt and ask him, what do they earmark those monies for? Or is it just going to the general program fund or whatever? So that's one thing. And then somebody had mentioned about the private sector and, getting donations from private sector. AI Root, they bought all of their own lights and installed all of their own lights. And for the past 2 years, Stan Sheets has been wanting to purchase the lights, but he needs help installing them because he said he's old and he can't get up on the ladder. So there are other businesses out there that would help. And then John from the Times Square was interested in putting lights on the trees that are in the parking lot, the Feckley parking lot. But I don't think we ever got back to him on, again, the installation and where those lights could be tied into. I don't know if there's an electrical outlet down there.
Actually, we did. We chose not to because, again, the point is the 21 points of power, that was extending it even more. He was told that we're not extending it.
He wanted to buy the lights and have us put them up.
We barely got done with Candlelight Walk.
Plus, I think he wanted them year-round.
Right, well, I guess the question is, why don't we, what he has here, what I would suggest is that the amount of money here, that he's requesting is $6,900, and then if everybody's agreeable to $12,500, or maybe not, the rest of it used just for installing them and maintaining them. That money to pay either Bobby, because he's the one who's most familiar with correcting them on the roof, but a portion of that money would have to go to an electrician to eliminate the 21 points of power. That is ridiculous. We don't need that. The LEDs could run off the whole city off of 2 plugs. So we have to figure a way, how's that possible? And I think maybe we put money towards that rather than to additional lighting, that would be helpful, because and then ask that we have a box or something installed. Maybe it is in the rest, if people coming in, they see it, maybe we can generate at least some money, 1,000 or maybe more to help for the maintenance of it. And that's what we designated for.
Maybe that's something that, like, Kimberly, thank you, suggested that we can approach Matt with. I agree with you that we should set aside money now, and now's the time to do it for our purpose and hire a contractor or an electrician to, appropriate money for that tonight.
Well, I think Bobby, when he put it up, it cost about, if we did it the first year, he did all the lights around the square for like $6,500 or $7,500.
$9,800.
Right. But he put them all, but he put them all up the first time. I mean, he had to put down each individual tab.
Absolutely.
We don't have to
11
do
inches on
that
center.
on the maintenance of it,
Yes.
right? He has to just go, make sure they're hooked up, and he doesn't have to redo it all.
Go back, take them apart, put dielectric grease on that way you keep the water out.
Well, the plug you're talking about, not
Yes.
in each individual light.
I'm not talking about a donation box. I would rather that we table it, because I'd like to hear from, like I said, I like the program, but I'd like to hear from Matt what Main Street's doing, not just to get a donation box, but as an annually, what are we doing as a what are we doing to raise money to start to cover the cost? Because as we add things to this program,
Somebody's gonna request it.
the cost of the maintenance and the putting up and the hooking up
Absolutely.
continues to grow. And if there isn't some sort of not just a box, but a fundraising plan in place, that cost is just gonna continue to balloon.
Because what we don't want to have happen is 5 years from now, we have to say, well, we're not having.
Turn the lights on.
Right.
And I don't know that there's that kind of urgency that we can't hold off on this for another.
Well, I think the urgency would be, what the mayor suggested is, Nino and his department can't continue to be doing that even for this year, because it's just nonstop. I would suggest that we, whether you call it a contractor or electrician or whatever, that the city should contract with to, one, get the point of entry down from 21 to a more manageable, and take that out of the hands of the service department.
I agree with you.
But I agree with exactly what you're saying.
Well, we only can spend so much, we're not gonna, if they come back and say 20,000, are you gonna approve 20,000? I don't think so. So I think the question is, maybe what we do is not do the lighting, but maybe just appropriate X amount of dollars for the maintenance of it, and just say, okay, we have this much money, and then try to talk about, okay, we have this much money, what can we get accomplished with this much money? Can we narrow down the points of connection? Can we just fix the lights that fell off the parapets because they came on little
But
sockets?
I think a better way is to do it, to get a quote from Bobby.
Oh, okay.
What is it to narrow the points of connection down? What is it to maintain the existing lights? And if you were to install these,
What would
then
it
we can
cost?
kind of pick and choose what number is reasonable for us this year.
Because we still have $1,000 from the church, right, that we haven't spent yet?
Correct, we didn't bill them, and I know they want to expand their steeple, but I guess that's my question to you all, is where, is this project going to expand even more? I mean, when Kimberly gets these questions
Well, I think
from
the
the
main thing we should
John
focus on, in my mind, would be the Tower of Castle Noel, the clock tower on the square, and the church tower, because they gave you money. And we already
They
have
didn't give us
contracts.
money, the church did not give us money.
Oh, I thought they gave $1,000, or they
No,
committed to
yeah.
give $1,000.
They mentioned it, we didn't get to that yet, so.
But we have contractors up on the courthouse right now
Correct.
again,
Yes.
which may be something that we could utilize, because they're there. They already have scaffolding up again, and they're doing stuff on them. But I don't know, I guess you're right, why don't we talk to Bobby and see, and talk to those contractors that are at the courthouse and see if they would donate or get involved to help. They may say, we're up there already, we'll just put them up for you.
Right.
And on the points of connection, why don't we talk to Stevenson, because Stevenson Foundation originally did the electric for the square, and they were in favor of that. The boxes, those original boxes that we put up there when there were different events like Art in the Park and things.
Well,
If we can separate that part of it, we might be able to talk to Stevenson about funding that part.
Because we do have to narrow that down, it's way
Yeah, we
too
do.
much.
Right.
Okay, well, let's hold this then and come back and talk and get some information from Bobby and from the Stevenson Foundation, see if they cover that. The next one we have is 14165 Champion Creek Restoration Agreement with T&M Associates.
Yes, it's really straightforward, just to have the mayor be able to sign an agreement so we can get this project moving. Emergency clauses requested to keep it moving on track as quickly.
Okay, there's no funding, we'll pass it.
And that project's not gonna start, or won't be completed rather until 2016?
It'll be pretty much a lot of it happening in 15, but getting it moving quickly as possible, they can start working on evaluating removal of invasive material and junk in the creek, in the stretches.
But it could go as
This
long
fall,
as to 2016.
It has to, can't go any longer than middle of 16, because that's the grant.
That's the grant period.
Okay.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 14166, revocable use permit for 122 Public Square. Mr. Huber.
I can address this
Are you
one.
doing
This
it?
one is
Okay.
a real simple one. It's the building that Second Soul is in. The Gow Industries owns their 620 Construction owns it, and it's to build a ADA ramp so we can close out their CO so they can work on some CRA tax abatement.
And they're coming on 7 feet by...
It's coming into a little bit of the kind of unusable area that was part of the Key Bank property that we purchased. It's that little area between what was, which is now PJ Marley's, and the back of the 122 south.
And it doesn't affect them at all, PJ Marley's.
It won't affect PJ Marley's at all. It won't affect the usability of the rest of our property, so.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Rezone, 114-167, rezone several parcels of the 200 block of West Smith Road.
Yes, this is a planning commission project that came on August 11th, or August 14th rather, a continuation of a project, of an application from January of this year. Habitat for Humanity owns a block of property at 223 West Smith, which had a fire and was demolished, and then subsequently the property was given to Habitat for Humanity. They can't use it for their purposes due to the location and, right on top of the railroad tracks there as it crosses Smith Road. So they want it there, they have it up for sale, can't really sell it as a single-family residential property, so they sought rezoning from R3 to C2. In January, the planning commission felt that looked too much like spot zoning, so they asked them to expand it to the properties to the east and west along this block of West Smith. And they were able to talk to all the property owners. They all agreed, they all were included in a new application. And that was brought to the planning commission. Planning commission approved, recommended the rezoning of these properties from R3 single family to C2, which is consistent with pretty much the rest of West Smith Road, coming out of the downtown, going toward going to the west, and consistent with the C2 of the properties immediately to the south, on the south side of the 200 block of West Smith. So this would just be recommending to put it into the public hearing process now for City Council. So I suggested a following timeline for that process, to get it into a public hearing at City Council.
And I'm going to abstain from this one since I'm a neighboring property owner, and I don't want to, one way or the other, I don't think I can, say what I think. But maybe I can, I don't know.
No, you can't.
I don't
Abstain.
I don't think I can. Would I like to? Sure, but I can't. So we don't have to approve anything now, you're just going to put it into a public hearing?
This would be for you, for
To start-
committee to move it on to
A public
council
hearing.
agenda for a public hearing,
Okay.
probably in October.
Everybody okay with that?
I'm okay with it, I just have one question.
I don't think we should vote.
Habitat for Humanity wouldn't build on that lot because it was too close to the railroad?
Yeah, because it really doesn't meet what they're looking for residential properties, but they were given.
The thing that burned down there was a...
It was a house.
So there was somebody living there, right?
Yes, there was people living there, yeah, but, it probably it was, I think it was a
And there's a house
rather old
next to it.
so,
And there's a house next to it.
people
Right
were
now.
living there, but new construction for their mission, it doesn't meet their mission for the clientele that they serve, so.
All right, well, I think you set up for a public hearing, I don't think you need to vote or anything, so we'll move that on.
You know that for sure?
I don't, there's nothing to vote on, because we're not approving
Vote
anything.
saying yes to go to public.
No, I don't think we have to.
Or would require an ordinance.
At that point in time, right?
Okay.
But I'm sure we want to hear what the public has to say first. 14168, expenditure over $15,000 for Mid-Ohio Concrete. Who's this one? Patrick?
We were asked to do a project this year to install some curb ramps, ADA curb ramps. We did accept proposals from a couple different contractors. Mid-Ohio is the lowest. We've used them before and recommend we use them again.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 14169 Spring Grove Bridge Replacement, design, build, process. Patrick?
Spring Grove Bridge, along with Guilford Bridge, are two bridges we plan on replacing next year. They're called bridges, they're basically big culverts. We'd like to move the Spring Grove one ahead quickly and are pursuing the design-build process. Spoke with ODOT. You may remember that ODOT, the state of Ohio, is replacing, I don't know how many dozens of bridges around Ohio, including 2 within the city. 90% of those are being done with the design-build process. So ODOT was kind enough to forward to us all their information, kind of boilerplate stuff, to basically make it easy for us to do the same process. So that's why we'd like to pursue that.
Pat, is there something going on right now with that bridge?
Yeah, we are doing a repair. ODOT, as council remember, they took over our inspections this year, our bridge inspections. And on their last one, they recommended we do some repairs to it. That's what our street department is doing now. Those are just temporary until we get the bridge replaced.
Move to approve.
Second.
With the emergency clause, I'm sorry.
My second includes emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 14170 grant application, Ohio Public Works Commission.
This is our annual grant app to the state, issue 1 grant. This year we are looking at receiving approximately $397,000. I guess there's 2 things here. The first, I would recommend that we apply for the North Hunting Street reconstruction. We've already got the engineering started on that, so we can really bid that as soon as we get approval for the grant, which will be next July 1st. Secondly, Mike Soleil, the county engineer, discussed with me, we have all the entities in Medina County, there's a minimum loan amount that we have to come up with. And he said he's having trouble getting communities to apply for the loan, and asked if we would be interested in applying. At this point, it's not required. It's a 0% loan. I believe it's a 20-year loan. We did apply and receive this last year for our Wadsworth Road waterline project. I guess I would just wanted to offer it out there. Is that something we would like to pursue again? If it would, I would suggest we do phase 2 of that project, because we actually truncated that project to meet $250,000. We wanted to go a little farther in that, but kind of scaled it back so we wouldn't exceed the loan amount. If we're interested in that, I would suggest we.
And this is all reimbursed out of the 108?
Pardon me?
All reimbursed out of the 108 account?
The loan?
Well, yeah, because it's utility. And also the road, of course.
I believe it is, yeah. You've given us permission for that, I think, already, and I think it was 108.
Well, I would imagine if you get a 0% loan for 20 years, why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
As long as it's paid out of the 108 account, I think, you know, it's a stable.
As long as we have a cash flow to pay it back, I agree.
Yeah, they did say most of these loan projects tend to be either water or sewer projects that have a cash flow to pay it back, but that's not a requirement if we want to look at some project.
I think the 0 interest loan out of the 108 account, and 250,000 you're talking about for 20 years? So I think
Up to 250,000, yeah. I'm not sure we need that full amount for this phase 2. I can certainly find out when the council.
I think there's enough money to cover that debt service payment every year. I think that's pretty low, 4,000 a year, I mean, something a year.
6 minutes to finish.
Okay. Any more other questions?
Move to approve.
Second. That's with the loan?
With the loan.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. 14171 agreement with HNTV Ohio West Smith Road reconstruction.
This is an amendment to our agreement with HNTV. We're doing the plans for both phase 1 and phase 2 of Smith Road. There was some additional requirements put on them from both the city, ODOT, Army Corps of Engineers. We changed some things due to some right-of-way conversations we had with some of our property owners. Anyhow, there's some extra work that they are required to do, and to the tune of about $32,000, a little less than $32,000.
Coming from the 108 account, of course.
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
14172 480 Wadsworth Road water main.
This is for that Wadsworth Road project we just discussed. We need a total of, I think it's 7. These are the first 4 we got.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 14173 5 easements for Lancaster Drive and from drainage.
This project, I would ask for the emergency clause, only that these folks, the project's done, and these folks signed their easements before council's recess. We neglected to submit them before then, so a couple of them asked about their payment.
Okay.
Move to approve with emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. From 14-174 easement for forest meadow drainage improvements.
This is the last easement we need for the project that's currently under construction.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll do the executive session after council. Anything else coming from finance? Meeting adjourned.